Namaskar and very good afternoon. Dear learners, I am Dr. Renu Tomar. I am going to today talk about meaning and aims of education. Friends, as all of you know, this is a very important topic in the context of the paper which is taught at B.Ed, M.Ed, B.L.Ed as well as B.A. education. That is foundation paper which covers the aspect of philosophy of education. So, this is an important topic from the perspective of the foundation of education, as this is the topic which is covered in almost all the programs. So, friends, today I have chosen this topic so that you can understand it well, you can understand the base of education as well as understand that what is foundation of education from the philosophical point of view. Friends, first of all, let us try to understand what is meaning of education. From the philosophical point of view, we would say that education is very broad. Education is neither instruction nor inquiry nor research nor learning nor teaching nor experiences nor skills, neither the building of attitude. In fact, it is all of that. That means education is a systematic process through which a child or an adult friends. So, this is an important aspect, that education is not something which is restricted to child only. It is something which is lifelong, and it is as important for a child as it is for an adult. So, adults should also keep in mind that being educated means being learned, because we have to acquire knowledge, experience, skill and sound attitude, which has to change as per the requirement of the situations as well as requirement of the age. So, education basically aims at making an individual civilized, refined, cultured and educated. That means for a civilized and socialized society, education is the only means, and its goal is to make an individual perfect in attitude, perfect in experiences, perfect in skills, perfect in his understanding of the culture. Friends, when we talk about what do we understand by concept, meaning and aim of education, then we come down to the fact that how it is being defined differently. Etymologically, if we have a look at the word education, it has been derived from the Latin word educare, which means to nourish, educo, which means to lead out of ignorance, educere, which means to draw out the potential of the individual, educatum, which means act of training, educatus, which means to bring up to rear, and educatio, which means a breeding, a bringing up, a rearing. So, friends, from here on we understand that if we try to understand meaning of education, that education has been derived from the Latin word, and it has so many other derivations also, educare also, educo also, edicere also, educatum also, educatus also and educatio also. So, if we talk about education, then education or education, howsoever we want to pronounce it, it has several meaning. And if we look etymologically from the perspective of India, particularly Indian soil has seen education as either shiksha or vidya. And friends, shiksha is different from vidya. What does shiksha means? Shiksha means to discipline, to control, to instruct, to teach. And what does vidya means? Vidya means to know. So, that means when we talk about vidya, it itself states that education is a lifelong process, because never ever we can say, even when we are about to die, we cannot say that we know everything, because knowledge is continuously changing, continuously improving itself, and it is so vast, so deep that we cannot have, even if we try to educate ourselves throughout the life, even then we cannot have 5% of the education or knowledge which exists on the earth or beyond it. Because when we talk about education, we are not just talking about the education which is restricted to earth. We talk about universe also, we talk about religion also, we talk about spirituality also. So when we talk about education, that means we are talking about our inner self as well as outer self. So education has been from the ancient India as well as throughout the world, it has been perceived as a right road to the progress and prosperity. In fact, true education has been seen as a harmonious development of physical, mental, moral, that is spiritual, and social faculties. These are the 4 important dimensions of life for a life which has to be trained or which has to be conditioned for a dedicated service. Because education means that we are creating a civilian, we are creating a citizen, we are creating a technocrat, we are creating a bureaucrat. So education means creation of anybody and everybody. When we will talk about that, how it has been perceived by different theorists or educators in the world at large, we will understand that why are we saying that education means that we can create people. If we understand how the education has been seen by Aristotle, it is creation of sound mind in sound body. Very simple definition, but having lot of meaning in it. What does sound mind means and what does sound body means? Sound body means that we have to take care of our physical self. We have to understand and know our physical needs and accordingly cater to as well as control as per the requirement. What does sound mind means? Sound mind means the mind which has knowledge, which has understanding of the world at large, which is knowing everything. So from the Aristotle perspective, we understand that education is understanding and knowing things, because sound mind means understanding of almost everything which exists around him. From the Rousseau, who was a naturalist, he saw education is child's development from within. As Rousseau understands it, that education means that child has everything inside him, but who is responsible for bringing that out? It is education. So that means as Locke saw, another philosopher and another educationist, he saw that child is a clear slate on which educator has to write a story. Educator has to create a person out of a child, and it is the efficiency of the education system or the educator that it can bring out a technocrat, a bureaucrat, a politician, a leader, or even somebody like terrorist also. So education means, from the Locke's perspective, that means writing a story in about a child who is a clear slate. But from the Rousseau perspective, the child has everything within. It is responsibility of the education system and the educator as to understand what the child is having and accordingly explore and provide him environment so that child can be what he is meant to be. From the Plato's perspective, education is the capacity to feel pleasure and pain at the right moment. It is a very simple definition, but as all of us know that the Plato has never been so simple, and he in all his theories he has been having very deep insight. So from the education point of view, we understand that feel pleasure and pain at the right moment means that we should understand the situation in the appropriate perspective. So able to understand the things in an appropriate perspective is the most difficult job, and this is the job which education has to do, that is building up a perspective of the individual. and building his capacity to feel pleasure and pain at the right moment. Pestalozzi, another educationist, saw education as a natural, harmonious and progressive development of man's innate power. So from this perspective we can understand that education should be a natural process and it should be harmonious. Harmonious means that it should be having harmony within the society, it should be having harmony with the requirement, need or aptitude of the child, as well as in the environment which exists outside, and it should be progressive. Progressive in the sense that it should be aiming at steadily bringing out man's innate power. Who is the man's over here? The child who is to become a man. From Froebel perspective, education is unfoldment of what is already unfolded in the germ. So what is germ? Germ means the child has, from the Froebel perspective we see that every child is basically a learner and he wants to learn, and education provided unfolds the child's learning in such a manner that the child ends up as an educated man or educated human being. Dewey, who is regarded as a very important person in the education system, he saw education as a continuous reconstruction of experiences. That means education is not preparation for life, it is the living. That means education is the process of living through a continuous reconstruction of experiences. That is why Dewey saw education as a tripolar process. Tripolar process means that at one pole we had an educator, another pole we had a student or the learner, and the third pole we had the environment. So all the three, when they come together, then we have continuous reconstruction of experiences. Who is responsible for it? The environment and the teacher. Teacher has to choose the environment, provide it accordingly, and student's experience has to be reconstructed in such a manner that he is prepared for the life and he lives it fully. He is not just prepared for the life, but it lives it. So that means it is development of all those capabilities in the individual which will enable him to control his environment and fulfill his possibilities. So education is a tripolar process as it is a social process with a social function. From the Mahatma Gandhi's perspective, education means all-round development, bringing out the best in man, body, mind and spirit. So Mahatma Gandhi has brought together Aristotle, Plato as well as naturalists as well, because we know that the Gandhis, if we understand education from the perspective of Mahatma Gandhi, it does have certain elements of naturalism. So from that perspective we understand that Gandhi as an educationist saw education responsible for drawing out the best in man. So drawing out the best in man, friends, you must be able to recall Rousseau now, because it is also talking about drawing out which exists. So drawing out the best in man, body, mind and spirit. This is what Mahatma Gandhi has propagated, and this is what he means by building up the education system. Now let us talk about the Rabindranath Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore, another educationist, a very profound and important educationist from the Indian perspective. He talked about education as the one which enables the mind to find out the ultimate truth, which gives us the wealth of inner light and love and gives significance to the life. So from the Rabindranath perspective, education is not studying, it is not formal education, it is more than that, because here he is talking about the mission of education as to find out the ultimate truth. Which ultimate truth? Which will give them wealth of inner light. When do we feel enlightened? When does an individual feel enlightened? If we talk about enlightened, friends, you must be able to recall Gautam Buddha. Bhagwan Buddha is called the enlightened soul. So he will be termed as completely educated. So education from the Rabindranath Tagore's perspective is wealth of inner light, love which gives significance to life. Now let us talk about how Rig Veda, because education in India has run very long and it has existed in ancient India also. When Rig Veda has viewed education as something which makes a man self-reliant and selfless. Self-reliant means able to serve the people, because if he is selfless, that means he has become a servant in proper sense. And what does self-reliant means? Self-reliant means that the person can take care of one's own need on his own. So this is something, the purpose of education, to create self-reliant and selfless man. Friends, Herbert, another important educationist, has talked about education from the perspective of good moral character. That means education should aim at development of good moral character. That means from the Herbert perspective, what is the importance of education? Education means character building. From the T.P. Nunn's perspective, education is complete development of the individuality of the child, so that he can make an original contribution to the human life according to best of his capacity. Friends, we have covered so many definitions and we are going to cover a few more, but you must have come to a conclusion that education as being viewed by different educationists and our Upanishads and Vedas, it means that education is something which is it is holistic one. It cannot be perceived in part, but still various different educationists has also seen it in part as serving some particular agendas. So all those agendas or aims of education we will also be talking about in the lecture. Now to continue with the definition as has been given by the different educationists, particularly in the Indian context. Zakir Hussain, as everybody knows, Zakir Hussain has been really an educationist, and his purpose was to educate India, and he was responsible for higher education also in India. Zakir Hussain has defined education as the process of individual mind getting its full possible development. Most of the educationists are talking about development. Some are talking about the mind development, some are talking about the mind and body development, and some are also talking about the spiritual development. So, from the perspective of education, what we understand is that it is development. One, that means it is progression. Progression from one stage to another. May it be in the term of skill, may it be in the term of spiritual enlightenment. So, it is progression. Secondly, if seen from the different perspective, it has to be development in such a sense that the person is socially relevant as well as selfless and also spiritually enlightened. From the Swami Vivekananda perspective, we understand that education is manifestation of divine perfection which already exists in man. So Swami Vivekananda saw each individual as a son, as a divine perfection, and he said that education is responsible for manifestation of that divine perfection which exists in every human being. From the Upanishad point of view, education is the one whose end product is salvation. So friends, from all these definitions, you must have concluded that education is not such a simple process, and it is not something which begins at certain points and ends at certain points. From the Indian perspective, we know that because here I would like to quote Mahabharata, in which there is a story related to the son of Arjun, who got himself educated while he was in the womb of his mother. And because Arjun was narrating a story, the result was that the child got educated and he understood that how to go on a war, and the result was that he also fought in the Mahabharata and replaced Arjuna and tried to, because if you remember the story, in that story Abhimanyu said that his mother went off to sleep, that is why he was not able to learn completely how to break the Chakravyuh. But As far as the knowledge was concerned, he had been educated, and he again tested that knowledge as he went into the Mahabharata, Kurukshetra, and was also a warrior, which could have been done either by the Arjun or Abhimanyu took his place and fought, but because he was not able to hear, listen, learn the last portion of how to get out of the Chakravyuh, that is why he was killed. So friends, from here we understand, even the psychologists have proven that education begins in the womb of the mother, because the child can feel, the child can learn, the child can understand also. And education continues till the last breath. So education is the development of individual according to his needs and demands of the society, number one, because he is an integral part of the society. Secondly, education is there to highlight certain special features of an individual. So we can understand that education is both unilateral as well as bipolar in nature, and tripolar as well. Unilateral because it is individual oriented, bipolar because it is between teacher and the student, tripolar because environment also plays an important role as far as education is concerned. So from all these definitions, what we have understood is that one, education is a continuous process. Second, it is knowledge or experience. Thirdly, it is development of particular aspect of human personality or a harmonious integrated growth. Fourthly, it is conducive for the good of the individual or welfare of the society. It is liberal discipline or a vocational course. It is there to stabilize a social order. It is conservator of culture, an instrument of change and social construction. It is also something which is conducive for the good of the individual or the welfare of the society. It is liberal discipline or a vocational course, and as we said that it is stabilizer for the social order. So from here what we understand is that the nature of education is unilateral, bipolar as well as tripolar. As to understand how it is tripolar, we have to understand Dewey. John Dewey, he is the one who saw education as a tripolar process. That means it is a system of education which does not have social significance. Because as John Dewey has remarked as well as proven that it is the relation between the teacher, student and educational environment. All three of them are interrelated, and in fact it is the interaction between these three poles which results in education as a system and progression in education. So in this process of education, what is the role of teacher? Role of teacher is to influence the personality of the learner through his own magnetic personality. In fact, teacher is also builder of educational environment, as he provides the suitable experiences to the learner to develop and use fully his skills and capacities to achieve the good of the own self as well as welfare of society in which he is an integral part. Apart from that, the teacher's attitude and behavior has a very remarkable impression on the child. So the teacher also builds the character of the learner as he or she infuses in them respect for moral and spiritual values. That means the teacher must be aware of the modern strategies and techniques of teaching and be capable of using them to the best of his knowledge to make teaching learning more effective. Now, what is the role of student? The student here is there to because what is the aim of education? Education's aim is to build or develop the personality of the learner according to one's own need as well as the need of the society and interest and ability of the student. So education from the child perspective means we have to define the aim, methods of teaching, curriculum as per the interest of the student. So they have to have the orientation of the student. In fact, if the student doesn't play his role well, what is the role of the student? Student's role is to question, as to understand, as to get, as to prove his potential in the environment which is being provided to him. So to make teaching natural and effective, the teacher must be master of not just content but also understanding the psychology of the student as well as understanding the stages of development of the student as well as the characteristic. Here we are talking about the development which has been seen by the psychologist, or we can say social psychologist, when they have talked about the development of the children. So, the teacher should understand psychology well, the teacher should understand sociology well, and the teacher should also understand the need of the learner as well as need of the society and community to which it is serving. What kind of education environment should we be providing to the child? In the tripolar, the environment also plays a very important role. Which environment? The social environment. Society is the one which supply material to the teacher. They are taught in the form of the curriculum in school, which is again framed in the light of the needs and demand of the society. So, here we have to understand that society is the one which provides an environment, and that environment is being provided by the teacher to the student as to bring the best in him. And when that best is being brought out, then naturally the process continues as the child also gives back to the environment, and similarly again he takes back from the teacher. That is what DV has called that it is lifelong process, and education is not for life or learning, but it is lifelong process and it is for living. So, friends, on this note, I will take your leave. I promise to join you again in the part 2 of the series of understanding the concept, meaning and aims of education. So, Dr. Renu Tomar is signing off. Namaskar. Good afternoon. Thanks a lot for being there with me.